please. Thanks for doing that.
Fantastic, Stephanie.
All right, thanks. Um,
Well,
Thanks for joining us.
not surprisingly for us, it's been, I won't say all COVID all the time, but it's been a year unlike any other. In a normal year, we work with businesses and individuals and organizations to help achieve philanthropy and improve lives in communities we serve. In a normal year, we put out about 45 discretionary grants. In the last 12 months, we've put out about 280, and we're up about $3.3 million that we've been distributing in the 20 communities we serve to battle COVID. And unfortunately, it's still continuing. We'll keep doing on that work for as long as we need to. Food insecurity, housing, essential basics, virtual learning, all of these things that have just been so completely just sabotaged by this pandemic in the last year have just been really crazy, and the needs remain huge. We look forward to helping the cultural sector begin to climb back. And I see my friend Pete Lally down there just coming on. A lot of conversation to have. I'll go back to that in a second. But we're also looking at some of the key issues that are persisting even before COVID, but are persisting afterwards. Feeding America just came out with some data that Middlesex County has the third highest youth food insecurity in the US, which is stunning to me. It's just stunning. So that's something we're taking on seriously. We're looking at some programs beyond the band-aids of funding to make sure food gets to kids right now. What are the systemic issues that are causing this, and how can we attack those? We're really looking at that in a big way. We're continuing a lot of the programs we had been doing regularly. We continue to do the scholarships and all that stuff. The other thing that we're really now dialing up on is a new cultural economy plan for Lowell, with a focus on how do we make Lowell a more exciting place to bring creative businesses, build a cultural economy, but also how can we use this as a lever to build equity in the community there? Because I think that's, the last year has opened up so much the disparities that exist in equity and inherent racism and issues that we're really trying to tackle that at the same time. So we've got, at this point, a steering committee of about 11 people that's quite representative of the city. And we're working with a consultant we've hired to do this. And we're going to be in the process of really looking at this as a long-term project to elevate the cultural economy to be a core pillar of the city's strategic planning over the next 10 years. Because again, in the long run, it will not only improve lives for people who live there, but it can be a very, very strong economic engine, both for employment, but also for business growth, business building, and all that. So it's going to be a lot of interesting time. But just for the foundation, it has just been such a crazy year. For me personally, a lot of the work I was doing prior to COVID was trying to get out and meet people and spread the foundation's presence, particularly again towards the southern end of Middlesex, where we have had less contact over the years, and all that kind of got torpedoed by COVID. So I really am looking forward to beginning to rebuild that and restart that energy. So I'm hoping to connect with many of you over the next month or so. Just conversations about what we're doing and what you're doing, what you're seeing, how we can help.
Well, thank you, Howard, and thanks for all the work that you guys are doing with COVID and with the creative economy. And I think that dovetails nicely into the conversation that we're having today as well too. And it's good to hear that Pete Lally, not surprising, is part of this conversation. And Pete, maybe you can talk with us a little bit as we get into the conversation about that as well too. Does that work?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So again, thank you all for Howard. Thanks for the information, and thank you everyone for joining the conversation. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen, and we do this while we move people from the meeting part of this and into the webinar, in order to make it so that we can all sit back and eat our lunch, and then and just focus on the speakers, and we're all eavesdropping on today's conversation on hospitality and entertainment. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Before we, or as we move over to, if you've gone to these events before, well, first of all, thank you for joining us. I'm Stephanie Cronin, the Executive Director of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. But if you've joined us before, you know what we try to do is to create connections, relationships, even through Zoom. So we encourage you to put some information in the chat box about who you are, your email information. If you want to connect with other people afterwards, or just let us know how you're doing. We'd love to just hear from everybody. I know it's via webinar, but we do want to hear from everybody. So please put some information so you can connect with the other people who are in our virtual room as well too. I believe we are recording the event as well too. And we're going to include a link to the recording as well as a link to all the chat information in our follow-up email that we'll send out afterwards as well too. Again, thank you to Howard Amadon from the Greater Lowell Community Foundation for co-hosting today's virtual meeting. And Howard, could you also make certain you put some information about the Community Foundation in the chat box so people will have that as well after today's event. I think most people know the Middlesex 3 Coalition. If not, we'll be following up with you afterwards to let you know who we are. And thank you to Steph Britz for helping to coordinate today's meeting. Thank you to Demetrius Spanius President of Land and Sea for moderating today's event and all of our real estate events. We've been having fun with it. I've been learning something every month. So I've enjoyed having these. So Demetrius, you've been a great host with these meetings. So thank you. And thank you to our sponsors. We wouldn't want to be doing it without you guys. So thank you to AHP Architects, the BSC Group, and Raymer and Bronstein. And again, we're going to include some information in the chat box about these guys as well too. So thank you guys for your support. And of course, thank you to our panelists. We call panelists, I don't know if that's the right word, because again, what we're just trying to do is really just have a casual conversation, even though it's via Zoom. But we still call it panelists. So thank you to Jim Berry, the Executive Director of Cushman & Wakefield, Peter Lally, President of Spectacle Management, Bill Jean, Director of Business Development at Fulcrum Associates, and Kim Morrissey, the Professor and Program Coordinator of Hospitality and Culinary Arts at Middlesex Community College. Thank you all for joining today. Just to let you know, we're going to end this at 1 o'clock, but hopefully I'm assuming there'll be time for question and answer. So again, please use that chat box. And as you think of questions, just write them in there, or we can have you just raise your hand afterwards. But we'd love you to be involved with questions for our panelists as well too. And just to let you know, we do have some upcoming events too, with the reimagining the office space, forecasting the Route 3 future. And we have a real estate event with the New England Real Estate Journal coming as well too. So with that, I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Demetrius Spanius, to kind of introduce or kickstart the program. So
Great.
Thank you all again.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome all again today for the 8th. It's actually the 8th. It's kind of amazing. The 8th of our series of 10 real estate webinar. Sponsored by Middlesex 3, and I'm really pleased to be able to do this, and particularly to talk about this topic in particular. For those who don't know me, my name is Demetrius Spanius. I am the president, broker, and co-owner of Land and Sea Real Estate Incorporated. We're based in Andover. We work both residential, commercial, and investment properties throughout New England. And basically, 3 years ago, Stephanie and I started talking about what we might want to do for a real estate focus. We decided what was originally going to be a in-person series, but as COVID started to evolve, we ended up turning this into a online webinar series. And the topics changed drastically from where I was going to be focusing on pre-COVID to where I am at this point during COVID. So this topic is I think particularly important for that. And it's particularly because we're talking about hospitality, entertainment, we're probably two of the areas the most hardly impacted by COVID. And we're going to discuss this, and we're going to discuss kind of the future and where we think things are actually going. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to kind of go round robin style, and please give us a little bit about yourself and who you are and where you're from and what do you have to, what you're looking forward to doing. So I'm going to start with Kim, since you're at my right hand.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kim Morrissey. I am the program coordinator at Middlesex Community College for Hospitality and Culinary Arts. I've been there for about 12 years, and we have a program with probably about 100 students a year in the program. And then we also do a lot with workforce development, working with area companies and doing training kind of outside of the traditional degree path. So that's a little bit about me.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. Bill.
Yeah, good morning. Bill Jean, Fulcrum Associates. It's actually afternoon as we're talking now. We started in the morning. Fulcrum is a construction management firm located in Amherst, New Hampshire, and we're a very diverse portfolio of work from healthcare, life sciences, multifamily res, hospitality, advanced manufacturing. Been in business since 1989 and serving, Metro Boston north to southern Maine, and so everything construction related, ground up development, tenant improvement work, and the like. So hopefully I can give a little insight as to what we're seeing through our lens relative to the hospitality environment today.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jim.
Yeah, so well, first of all, every time I do one of these things, I always feel like I'm on an episode of Hollywood Squares. I don't know if you guys remember that game show.
Yeah, or the Brady Bunch, as I kind of look,
Yeah,
looking at it, right? Yeah.
But Pete's got center square today, so
He does.
He's got the main duty. But anyway, sorry to go off topic, but yeah, Jim Berry, worked for Cushman & Wakefield, executive director. What I do for a living is all hospitality. So anywhere from valuing these things to site selection to a lot of consulting. A lot of that I get to help people decide if they should build, if they shouldn't build, what if they are, what are they going to franchise it, independent, a whole host of things that are just specific to hotels. So it's a pretty good gig. I've got to see pretty much every inch of New England now, and yeah. So if you want to know anything about restaurants and tour guides and where to go for what hotels, I can do that too.
Excellent, excellent. Wasn't Paul Lynde the center square on the going in the 70s? So that's kind of picture him right now. So better than Paul Lynde, Pete Lally, please introduce.
Pete Lally with Spectacle Live, and my company provides booking, marketing, ticketing, venue management, and production services to a number of performing arts centers throughout New England. Most of the venues we work with are municipally owned. A couple of them are nonprofit, and we provide those services to help facilitate live events.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you all so much. So, as I mentioned, kind of before the introductions, I think that these two sectors have been impacted probably the hardest with COVID. Again, this was probably a topic that I wouldn't have talked about otherwise, or may have been folded into development and investment and development opportunities. But because of this impact, I found it very important that this becomes a focus on one of these webinars. So, as those of you who have never joined us before, this is it's kind of a round table. It's quite a quiet. We're sitting around having a conversation at a lunch table, and so it's very informal. So I'm just going to start throwing out a couple of questions. Probably my first one is going to be, let's kind of start with hospitality, and let's talk about the impact that COVID has had on hospitality in the past year. So, maybe Jim, if you want to kind of start that going, and kind of just take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'll keep the topic specific to the territory we're talking about today. So hospitality is a bunch of one-day leases. You don't get the benefit of having a 20-year lease with the government to ride out a recession or anything like that. So what happened was, as soon as the pandemic began, the next day these hotels were empty. So it's unfortunately Boston, the greater MSA, it had the worst performance of any major market in the country in regards to RevPAR. And that's a metric we use to determine financial feasibility, but also performance. So what that means is, since it began, we've been the worst performing market in the country. However, I got to caveat that at some point we're going to be the best. So the question is relative to this discussion, is for development purposes, when is that going to be?
Well, what do you mean by that? If I jump in a second, what do you mean how we're performing the worst in the country? Like in what type of metrics?
Yeah, so in regards to, let's just this RevPAR, so it's a function of occupancy and average daily rate that hotels can achieve. We had the largest decline percentage-wise anywhere in the country, and that was because we are heavily reliant on group, international tourism, corporate market. We're very, very active. And this is so markets, along the 3 corridor that, if you look at, there's an office building, there's usually a hotel nearby. And in that circumstance, in these markets, those hotels are not doing very well. They historically will do probably around 70 to 75% occupancy on average, and they're currently around 35.
Wow. Okay, interesting. So, Pete, why don't you tell us a little bit about the impact on entertainment, if you please?
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, it's been, as you noted, heavily impacted. Just now, starting to see some opportunity for venues to reopen. We've seen Major League Sports start to have some audiences on a limited basis in Massachusetts. Performing arts centers and venues under 5,000 seats have the opportunity to be up to 500 capacity. And so different venues are starting to, kind of crawl forward in that direction to be able to host some events. Of course, it doesn't happen overnight to be able to put things together. The state went from a capacity limit of 10 to 500 kind of overnight. So there wasn't really an opportunity to get a heads up to plan ahead. So we're starting to see, that was in early March. So we're, here we are 5 or 6 weeks later, and venues are starting to, put some plans in place for some smaller events with obviously, social distancing and all the other protocols that go with it. As far as the remainder of 21 is concerned, I think that's where most of the focus is for, I know for us and other performing arts venues is more of an optimism towards the end of the year that we might be getting back towards capacities that will allow us to really make the business model work again. And kind of in the interim doing some smaller things, but taking one step forward maybe every month or so that we can kind of get back towards capacities that'll allow it to work. One of the challenges with the industry right now is so much of what was for concerts and theater and so forth, sports, that was scheduled in the first half or even the remainder of 2020 when things shut down. They didn't get canceled, they got postponed over and over and over again. So you've got a lot of obligations between artists and theaters and other venues that are still in place. They're just trying to push those down the calendar until such time that they can do them because the contracts are all based on a full capacity. So there's a lot of backlog right now of these contracts that remain that kind of have to be cleared out when full capacity comes back, and no one's quite sure when that's going to be. So there's quite a lot of hurdles to get to be able to get back to anything close to like a 2019 volume. But it is nice to see that there have been some small steps forward in the last few weeks.
So, interesting, the term that Jim used, which I thought was really great, which I hadn't thought of before, and this applies both to hospitality and to entertainment, is a series of one-day leases. And I thought that was kind of a great way of explaining it, because of course it also impacts entertainment venues and sports venues as well. I mean, it's a series of one-day leases. And so what I would like to ask, and kind of maybe bring Kim into the conversation on this, how does that affected the workforce in general? Again, you think you have long-term obligations and long-term work, which has now suddenly shifted in a kind of getting back to this one-day lease concept, which I think this is great terminology. What does that do to your workforce, and in particular your workforce integrity and optimism?
Sure. I think students or potential employees, they're wary. They're nervous because they want some job security. A lot of people, when this happened, ended up having to collect some form of unemployment. And then the thought of kind of jumping off of that into the unknown. They want to go back to work, but the thought of not having guaranteed hours, not really knowing what the future holds. A lot of these, hotels, as Jim said, they went down to skeleton crews. They were down to very low occupancies very early on, and people were out of work. They want to go back. Our students want to go back, but they definitely want to see some security. Then we have two groups. We have certainly students that are in the program that are just dying to get out and work. And we have students that are looking to come in and thinking about going into hospitality, but there's definitely a concern of where it's going to go. And I think we all agree, a couple of years out, there's going to be some great hiring happening and great positions, but what do they do in the meantime is definitely a concern.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, all this kind of leads to a question, and, maybe Bill, you can start this part of the conversation and everybody else can kind of jump in on this, is, as COVID impacted kind of the day-to-day of both hospitality and entertainment. And so how has this impacted the development of new hotels, of new venues, and insofar as, building and again, optimism for investors to kind of move forward with these types of things? And kind of what have you seen over the last year and how that's impacting things today?
Yeah, great. The broader sense of hospitality, obviously affecting event centers, restaurants, beyond the hotel world, all of that came to pretty much a screeching halt as well. I mean, every restaurant had to pivot and, move to takeout and adjust their environments when outside dining was an option they went into survival mode, quite frankly. The encouragement that we're seeing now, and certainly from that perspective, development went on hold. We experienced, as did a number of others, projects that were in the works that just put the brakes on and said, not now and possibly in the future, but we don't know. We're just now starting to see a little bit more of that coming around. We've got three restaurants that are currently at various stages of development. Some are in construction and two are in planning. We just opened an event center, repositioned an event center that opened last week for their first wedding. So we're starting to see that. And then some of the athletic venues, one of our clients is a minor league baseball facility, and they were completely shut down last year. They are operational this year, and as a result, there's some pent-up demand for their facility. We've been over there for the past few weeks now preparing for their preseason activities and starting to get that ramped up. And in addition to that, I think some of the stronger hospitalities, and Jim, you might be able to speak better to this than I, that we've worked with, the stronger brands that were on the verge of their PIPs, product improvement programs, if they have the staying power now, while occupancies are low, they're starting to look at how they can position and phase in some of that improvement program while occupancy is low. So we're seeing a lot more activity. We're encouraged. We've got a couple of athletic projects that have been resurrected and are advancing through the various stages of approvals and processing. So as we know, in the development cycle, particularly in a lot of the larger hospitality worlds, the approval process has a certain calendar to it. And then obviously the physical construction side of it is there as well. So you need to be planning 18, 24 months out. So the good news is we're seeing a lot of that conversation re-engaged right now. So it's positive.
And then maybe, as part of that too, what is and again, I'm kind of opening it up to anybody here. I mean, what are you seeing insofar as investor confidence? And not just investor confidence, even municipality confidence about, supporting some of these projects. Because I know with hotels, you're dealing primarily with investor developers, but, with kind of the large entertainment venues, you're dealing with, municipal help or state help. So what are we seeing? If I can kind of throw that out as a general question, what are we seeing insofar as confidence and commitment?
I see the financial aspect of it is being the biggest hurdle right now. All the projects that we're contemplating development going forward, it's getting that capital stack and financing put together and assembled with the confidence. So I think that remains a hurdle, and Pete and Jim, you can probably speak a little bit to that, but certainly that's what we're seeing in our project development.
Yeah, so the two biggest hurdles we see, so for Middlesex County and basically suburban Boston is, yes, financing is difficult to obtain because the lenders are wary about fundamentals. Every time they read an article, see a Facebook post or whatever, it's something that's not generally positive. But on the investors' side, they're looking to 2023. They're getting very bullish on the fact that half the country is now vaccinated, give or take, and that the desire to travel is through the roof. The desire to do business also is through the roof. It's just we're just waiting for it to be safe, and for corporate liability reasons to allow people to travel again. So we really do believe it's going to pick up next year, and in 2023 we're going to be able to ride a wave that's going to be, we're going to see this straight up V curve. So folks are lining up projects. So they had projects in the works. They're trying to rework that so it's a 2023 option. The lenders, there's a saying, the lenders are the last to leave the party and the last to join the party. And that's probably going to be the case again. So if something does make financial sense, it's probably going to be the lending side that waits. But I am seeing some lenders getting ready to start at least looking, jumping back in. Interest rates, they were 8-9% in blood money. They've come down. I've seen some sub 5% interest rates now. So it's getting back to normal. You just need a little time. In regards to the opportunities now for Kim's graduates, I am seeing on the construction side of things in our leisure markets. The leisure markets are absolutely crushing it. There is no recession anymore. There is no demand issues. There is no pricing issues. So I see, for example, there are 3 or 4 projects alone in North Conway, New Hampshire. So if someone is willing to relocate and look in other areas in New England, our leisure markets and coastal markets are seeing activity.
And actually, that's great. For all the participants, who are on the call listening, could you give a 2-sentence definition of what's a leisure market?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the easiest way to be, where would you want a vacation? If you're not working, where do you want to go? So we're talking about, in Mass, we're talking about the Cape, right? We're talking about Cape Ann. We're talking about the southern Maine coast from York to Kennebunkport to, Algonquin, North Conway, anywhere in the White Mountain, Jackson, New Hampshire, North Conway, New Hampshire. Your ski destinations. And all those places, even if you don't see new development right now, they're getting flush of capital to do renovations and expand. So I can also add like Newport to that and the Berkshires, on and on. Those are the active markets for the next 2 years.
I'm going to swing back to Pete in this question in a second, but I want to ask him a quick question on that. And Jim, you can jump on this as well. Insofar as, are these not seasonal markets for the most part? And if so, does that have any type of impact on workforce confidence, Kim?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I know like a lot of the Boston markets were hurt when students didn't all come back to school. So when they were trying to reopen, they didn't have that student population to jump into a lot of the entry level hospitality jobs. So if they're not there, maybe they'll be more willing to travel to some of these leisure sites for work and take on those opportunities. If they can see that there's going to be some job security, even if it's just for the 3-month seasonal span, I think that's definitely something they'd be interested in. And we're definitely looking too with workforce development funding that we can help get people trained, particularly in culinary positions, because that's one of the ones that definitely needs a little bit of hands-on skills. So, as these businesses are ramping up and they're ready to go, hopefully there's a trained workforce ready to jump in pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can just say like the number one problem in these leisure markets right now is labor. They don't have enough. In fact, some guys are really worried that they're going to be able to sell out their hotels the entire summer, but they're not going to have enough people to manage everything, fix, to maintain everything. They're going to have, basically rooms out of order, not because of they're dirty or something. It's just the fact that they don't have the management power to maintain them.
I was just speaking to a large operator on a facility in the coast of Mass on Saturday, and she was expressing to me that one of their challenges right now is just that they have a lot of foreign labor that comes through for the season, and with travel restrictions, they're going to be limited as to what they're going to be able to open up in their facility as the season advances. So they're aggressively seeking, local help. Obviously, one of the challenges of being a little bit more seasonal. But
Yeah, the good news for graduates is that wages should be going up because there's more demand. But probably for the next year or two, you're going to have to potentially think about relocating, going to one of these destinations.
Cool, thank you. So Pete, now let's kind of go back to that question for you insofar as confidence and development moving forward. I know you have a couple of big projects in the irons in the fire that are happening right now, and someone actually sent me a message on you have something in Laconia as well, and you're so why don't you tell us what you're
involved in a few different projects that are in various stages of development. Some of them are just in the design phase, others are nearing completion. Laconia, New Hampshire being one of those that should be in the next 30 days or so completed. We also are involved with the Nashville Performing Arts Center. I think my good friend Tim Cummings is call, and he timed it perfectly, and they just broke ground last week. So hopefully by the time that building is coming online, we're going to be hitting, as Jim noted, presumably a nice rebound in that sector. So that's what we're anticipating, is hopefully 2021 being small steps forward throughout the rest of the year, and then 22, 23, hopefully being a nice snapback. But on the municipal side, what I've noticed is that so many of those projects, first of all, the metrics are different. A lot of those are developed with the intent of economic impact and stimulus, and not necessarily a calculated ROI in the same sense that you would get from a commercial development. And also the timeline that those are typically developed on, sometimes those can be 5 or 10 years in the making. And I think that allows them to ride out the ups and downs. And of course, there's still the opportunity to have some difficult timing, as we're seeing with Laconia, where that one's coming online, or construction's finishing up next month. But there's just kind of a different way of rolling that venue out that'll be a little more gradual. But not really seeing a whole lot of slowdown. I think those projects that, like I said, are in design and development are still progressing unabated at this point.
Very cool. It's kind of interesting is one thinks about it, the overall kind of impact of both of these areas actually are so integrated, and I think a lot of people don't. I mean, you do realize it, but you don't think about it insofar as how hospitality and entertainment venues all go hand in hand together. I mean, I knew just for a little insight, I have to just to share. So a couple of you know this. So before real estate, I spent 20 years as a touring musician, and the idea of going to play the Detroit Jazz Festival, for example, like one of the hotels, its pure purpose was to house all of the artists, and this is what we did, for a week, right? And that hotel, its entire booking was for all the artists, and then you had the venues, and of course, then you had the restaurants and everything else kind of surrounded into that. And so it's kind of an amazing thing how it's such an integrated system between the three areas, between the hotels, the restaurants, and the performing arts venues. So I guess my question for this then is, as you look forward and you look at the municipalities, because I always have questions from municipalities, because we work with a lot of, not just in the Middlesex 3 region, but all over New England. And I'll have municipalities come to me and saying, boy, we would love a hotel here. We want more restaurants here. We want a performing arts center in the center of our town. Well, you only get 600 people in the town. That's okay. We still want a big venue here, because we're at the crossroads of route whatever. And so if you guys can kind of give me an idea of metrics, and this, we're kind of more talking about the development and the economic side and the workforce side of this, is that what are people, investors, developers looking for insofar as where to focus their energies on, again, hotels and entertainment venues? Give me an idea. and we can jump in.
Sure, I guess I'll go first. So in the hotel side of things, generally you're looking within a 3 max 5 mile radius for your site to where your demand generators are coming from. So it can be very micro. It can be just 1 mile. So it depends. Or if you're in the case of a true leisure destination, it could be the entirety of New England, New York, the Mid-Atlantic. It depends, where you're getting your demand. So so in a roundabout way, hotels tend to be more micro.
And you said for your demand, because we see hotels popping up in towns, which kind of surprised me that they're popping up in, and other towns that I look at that have a larger, high dense population, might even have a college or two that have very limited hotels. And so, kind of what's kind of the thought process there?
Yeah, so I mean, generally what these guys will look for is, is there an office building? Okay, check. Is there a restaurant nearby? Check. Is there something to do? Check. But yes, absolutely. There are some popping up in areas that you wouldn't think a hotel would be popping up. And that tends to be more of your 65 room boutique hotel that's in an acute area that doesn't necessarily need the Tuesday through Thursday demand, but can hit it on the weekends and extend them. So it could be wedding business. I'm shocked every day when I see these hotels, how much weddings actually contribute to room demand and from blocks. It's absolutely amazing. Some places, absolutely, this is where they make their money. But, for a developer, you're looking for ultimately, you're seeking out something you're trying to meet this demand source that's not currently being used. Or sometimes actually you just want to cannibalize a market. You want to be new. So it's a good thing. So like say Marlboro, it's just in your county here. You saw a bunch of new construction because of the fact that some of the hotels were 20, 25 years old. So what they were doing was it'd be displacing some room in other markets that had newer products. The hotel space is very cannibalistic. Folks are always building new to steal from others. So it's sometimes it's just stealing market share from having a better product. And in the franchise world, once a franchise is 20, 25 years old, it usually those franchisors want to build new in those markets anyhow.
And we were meeting with a group yesterday that is faced with exactly what you described. They are an event center, wedding-driven events. Do 100 weddings a year, 300 plus events a year, and one thing that they're void of is a hotel. And they're doing the analysis, and we just completed the analysis and then doing some pro forma work on it right now. Is what is the optimum room count? And they're contemplating as part of their package, developing a hotel on their property that'll be supported predominantly on the Friday through Sunday stay versus the Monday through Thursday stay. For the hotel will be driven predominantly by the event center. And the numbers are proving out that the occupancy will be to a point where, with the events that they have, they'll be able to justify the cost to build. It's pretty interesting analysis.
Your thoughts on? I think you're going to say something, but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, kind of your thoughts on that too, insofar as areas of impact and why certain areas are chosen, and particularly for entertainment venues. I mean, is it very similar to the metrics with the hotels? Again, we're kind of talking for the municipalities here.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I think it's all an ecosystem. What I've seen is that sometimes the performance venues are kind of first into a specific area, and it does tend to be, as Jim mentioned, kind of a pretty small area and some geographically compact in a lot of cases. And it's not just going to a performance. A lot of times, it's where are you going to eat? Can you park once, go to eat, and go to the venue? Where are you parking? So it's the logistics of it, the services in and around a venue, and sometimes those venues tend to be first as kind of economic stimulus of getting let's if you build it, they'll come. So if you build a performance space, the hotels will come, the restaurants will come. On the other hand, sometimes it's a situation where it's a nice addition to an already existing infrastructure. Where you might have restaurants who want to see, added business or hotels and say, hey, if we had a performance center here, this would just add, particularly in markets that might have that Monday through Thursday demand on the hotels, to have something that's more weekend focused and create that balance. Certainly winds it up. But I think it really is that we always kind of say that we own people's experience from the time they leave their house to the time they get home. So everything in between. They I once had somebody, I asked them how the show was, and their answer was their dinner was bad. And so it's like the whole night, whatever happens that night, it doesn't matter what the show is. That was what they remembered. Like they went to a restaurant, the food was late, they got to the show late. So it all interconnects, and it's great when it's all there, when you've got all those different pieces. And in some cases, we have there are venues that have all those different pieces within a very compact space. In other cases, it's a little more spread out. The hotel, restaurant, retail, and performance space, isn't right on top of each other, but it still works. In other cases, it's kind of in that middle ground where there are some pieces of the puzzle, there are others that are coming along. But a lot of times the performance centers are looked at as that stimulus that'll at least anchor a given downtown or geographic area.
Very cool. And it's kind of interesting too. And Jim, I'm going to go back to something else you said. You brought up a town like Marlborough, which I think really in the past so many years is, I don't want to say it's on the map, but certainly it seems to be on the map. It seems to be a focus for a lot of development and a center for a lot of renovations. And I think there are a lot of towns now in New England kind of doing that. And what I want to, maybe kind of look at this, and maybe this is a question for Kim, is insofar as the appeal for development, insofar as the workforce goes, and where are you pulling these people from? Because we talked about workforce saying, well, okay, seasonally you can move for 3 months for this and get some job security, but really, if you're looking at, and maybe you guys have the metrics, and Kim, you can jump on this as well. Let's say we're talking about one of these centers, like a Nashua, for example. Now that you've got a new center, or Lowell, you've got the Lowell Performing Arts Center, and you've got the a couple of the hotels around there. Where is this workforce coming from? Is it local? Is it regional? Are people driving 20, 30 minutes? Are they driving an hour? How is that affecting that? Kim, you want to start with that?
I would say that's definitely been shifting over the past few years, whereas people are definitely not as willing to travel for these type of jobs. They're willing to go a little bit further. But still, a lot of them are relying on public transportation. I know, with Burlington, when they started ramping up, they were really looking at how they could get people from places like Lowell up to Burlington to work, and what they were doing to provide transportation. So that's definitely a factor. And then you see too, when you have all these new places popping up, a lot of them take from existing staff at other places. As Jim said, that when the new hotels come up, staff will jump ship and go to the new hotel or go to the newest restaurant simply because it's busier and there's more opportunity to make the money there. And so it's a combination of where they're finding the staff, but it's definitely a challenge when you have a hub that pops up with a lot of locations at once, all trying to find enough staff. It's good for workers because they're competing and offering some great wages and some great benefits for them. So that's a plus.
We just got a question in, and I'm gonna change topics just slightly, because I think this is an interesting question, because this affects hotels and entertainment venues. And the question was on passport vaccines, but I think it leads to kind of a larger question in general. Is how are hotels and entertainment venues now dealing with COVID to ensure safety, for the workers and for the attendees. And also, is this changing how things are being developed? I mean, and how things are being built and designed? Because I know in the multifamily world, certain like amenity areas are now being changed and adapted and been changing corridors. I know in the office world, I've been seeing, one of my colleagues said that they have corridors that are over 12 feet wide. So you could have a glass partition in between, you could have people walking in either direction. And that's how things are being designed now. So how is this impacted, safety for both the workers and for attendees, and how's that impacting design going forward?
Well, I can say,
yeah.
I'll say for worker safety from the area restaurants that I've been talking to, they're very wary to require any sort of vaccine requirement for their staff. They certainly would like their staff to be vaccinated, but they're not at the point where they're requiring that type of thing from their staff.
Is that fear of losing workforce?
Yeah, I think, they don't want to mandate it. For most of them I've spoken to, workers have been, pretty safe working with the masks and following all the safety protocols. So people that are working don't feel unsafe in, a lot of the area restaurants that I've been talking to. And so they're just kind of leaving it to a personal choice. I think, they would prefer it maybe, but definitely not a mandate.
I think there's so much that's just unknown at this point in terms of how things are going to be handled with workforce or passports or whatever else. It's just evolving so quickly that I don't think anyone is jumping too quickly to make any rash decisions on it. And also, I think that I hear time and again, our particular segment of the hospitality industry is pretty dormant still. But in talking to restaurants and hotels, that's the first thing out of everyone's mouth is just a labor shortage. And I think in some cases they're competing against, the explosion in the last mile delivery. You can go and drive for Amazon or Uber, or, it's kind of in some cases some of that same part-time pool and that coupled with restrictions on people coming in and out of the country that may provide some of that workforce. It's a real issue. So surprisingly, as difficult as the industry or as impacted as the overall hospitality entertainment industry has been, even at the levels that it can operate, it's really struggling on the labor side and also competing against unemployment. The boosted unemployment benefits don't offer some security and stability that I think those in the workforce that can take advantage of that still are hesitant to jump back for a number of reasons, including that, hey, if I go back and I kind of disrupt my unemployment, what if this restaurant doesn't continue to give me the hours, or the hotel? It's safer to kind of stay on the sidelines. So there's a lot of headwind there.
But Jim and Bill, are you seeing things like the change in how things are being designed as well, insofar as with for lack of a better term, we'll call it COVID precautions in mind?
Certainly the biggest in every discipline that we're looking at is mechanical systems, the HVAC, the ventilation requirements. That's probably the most significant change that everyone's looking to address immediately. We haven't seen a lot of new product coming out of the design groups that have significant modification to their designs. Certainly it's all being considered, but there's just not, there hasn't been enough that's come through our doors that we're seeing that we could pinpoint as, one particular design feature over another. Jim, the hotel world is kind of interesting because they're all isolated rooms that have typically a lot of their own mechanical systems other than the common areas. So, those in one sense could be viewed as a very controlled environment that you can isolate in, but I haven't seen any significant changes in there. It seems to be a lot more elbow room being planned into the hotel or the restaurants that we're working on, certainly. They're doing more things with partitions, and again, the HVAC systems is probably the biggest focus and biggest concentration we're seeing right now.
Yeah, we on the hotel side and design things, definitely the food and beverage concepts are being looked at. But if it's a franchise hotel, if you make one do it, you've got to make all 1,000 of them do it. And for a lot of the folks, that's not a return on investment. So surprisingly, there's been a lack of information on that and what's coming down the pipeline, which tells me that there might not be anything coming down the pipeline because there are expenses to retrofit and things like that might not have return on investments. And there are plenty of people who think we're going to snap back to doing exactly what we used to do. So I haven't seen too much yet. And what I see in the restaurant side is a lot more outdoor dining, a lot more dumbing down the menu so that doesn't promote as much sitting down for 2.5 hours, turn the tables over. But unfortunately, every time you take a table away, you're taking money away as well. That's for the owner as well as the server. So I would expect, again, focus on outdoor. Hopefully municipalities will allow folks to continue to spread their wings on the outdoor facilities, but I haven't seen anything as a permanent change yet.
Interesting. So let me kind of throw out for lack of a better term, we'll call it a final question for now, even though we're going to bring Stephanie back on with some other questions for some of the participants. But so what do you see for the future? Where are we going? You know, does it look good? Is it bleak? You know, what are we looking forward to, and what's that future look like? So, you know, I'm going to kind of go around. Whoever wants to jump in first, please.
Yeah, again, I'll reinforce what I said earlier. We see the horizon as very positive. I think confidence is growing with vaccines. You know, like I said, we've got three restaurant projects underway in various planning and development stages. We have a large athletic multifunction venue that's being designed and permitted. Event center, hotel, all of the hospitality related components are at least in planning and development. I think to Jim's point earlier, there was a fair amount of pent up demand, and the recovery we're viewing and hopeful is going to be very strong.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I said before, you know, we got hit the hardest, but at some point we're also going to be the fastest growing, fastest recovery. I tend to think it's 2023 for most of our suburban areas in downtown markets. So we have a little bit of time to wait. But when it comes back, it's going to come back absolutely fast and furious. And with that, I expect wages for workers to be going up. I don't expect any kind of stalling on that. So there's some better times ahead. Absolutely. This was a blip that wasn't an economic thing. It was a pandemic. No one saw it coming, and there's going to be some things that change. But in the end, I'm seeing all positive things. We just have a little bit more time to wait.
I agree. I think the future is bright. I think it's going to be a great market for employees. You know, they just have to be a little bit patient. But as Jim said, wages are going to be going up. There's going to be lots of job opportunities. There's lots of, you know, projects down the way, as Bill said. So I think, you know, the future is looking good. We just, you know, have to be a little patient to get to that place.
Yeah, agreed. I think it just, you know, it's the time between now and when we can get there. You know, for us, the bottom is being shut down, and so we can't nowhere to go but up. So we're starting to see those types of developments happen, and obviously we want to make sure we're doing it safely and getting there, you know, in the right way. But you know, I agree that as we start to move forward, it's going to be slow, but you know, certainly we could have a substantial rebound, I think, when things are really opened up.
So Pete, let me throw a follow-up question to that. When do you see, with your venues in particular, but just kind of in general, when do you see a full season being booked?
I've been doing that guesswork for 13 months, so I'm not quite sure, but I might as well continue, right? Because well, kidding aside, we've kind of had a pretty steady eye for probably 4 or 5 months on maybe October, more like November, December. That seems to be somewhat of a consensus opinion, or the best guess of the live entertainment industry at this point. Everybody's kind of holding on to that time frame. Is it October, November, December? Somewhere in there seems to be, you know, more optimistic. When we're securing dates at venues for artists, anything prior to that, dates are put on the calendar with a backup date. We're starting to see dates being held solid in that Q4 of 2021. But you know, it is anyone's guess. That could get pushed again, and if it does, that's what we'll roll with it. But that tends to I think be somewhat of a consensus opinion amongst a lot of people who have been keeping an eye on it. And also, like I said, not something that's moving around. That's been kind of a target for a number of months, that as we get towards the end of the year. And hopefully, you know, it reduced capacities prior to that, and gradually moving forward prior to that. But in terms of actually doing some full capacity events, that's the hopeful point. And I think a lot of it is going to come down to, last year, probably this summer, we're going to have, hopefully low numbers, just like we did last summer, hopefully lower than last summer. We saw a big rebound on those COVID numbers in the fall. So I think until we get to like Columbus Day, schools are back. There's such a major shift in people's, whether people are back to school or just off from vacation in that September timeframe. Fast forward a month, are we still seeing things in a good place for public gatherings? And I think that to me would be a real indicator. If by the early October, things are still looking good, then I think it's go time. But I think based on what we saw last year and having low numbers in the summer and then a substantial rebound, people might still be wary around that September timeframe to see what happens.
Because we know that most of the artistic organizations they make their money between Thanksgiving and New Year's, but
right, that's another thing too.
Right.
Everything, Nutcracker and Christmas Carol, you got to make your year.
Messiah, all of those are all that time period. So that's good. Well, that's good to hear. That's optimistic. Great. I'm going to bring Stephanie back on. Hi, Stephanie.
How are you doing? This has been a great conversation, guys. I do appreciate it, and I appreciate the optimism that you guys are bringing as well too. I feel better after leaving this conversation than before it started. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. But so regarding questions, there were a few questions, but Demetrius, I think you answered them. But I will ask if anybody has more to please put them into the chat box. But I have a couple of questions while people are doing that as well too. And one is on lessons learned. And I know we talked a little bit during our virtual networking about placemaking and outdoor dining and such. And I guess I'm wondering whether anything was put into place during COVID that you think will continue after COVID as well too. And I guess I'll use outdoor dining as the example of, will there be more of that, or are there other areas that you think might continue?
Bill, are you seeing, or Jim, designs that are incorporating more of their square footage for outdoor for those? Is that too early to be a trend on that yet, or are you seeing conversations around that?
Yeah, so I mean, everything comes down to construction costs, right? So the minute you start adding square footage, the project becomes more expensive, and et cetera, et cetera. So it can be it can just be a hamster wheel. But I see more in design. It's more of an experience. That's what people want to look for their hotels now. And there's a trend, not so much the cookie cutter, but if you can go somewhere and have an experience that you didn't have before, maybe in the case of a restaurant, there's some drink or menu item that you haven't seen before, or in the case of the room, it's a FF&E piece or design piece. Those are more of what's kind of going on. People are looking to be more, again, experiential. So if you go somewhere, especially on the leisure side of things, you're doing something you can't do at home or you can't normally do. It's something that's fun, active, and you feel like you've been activated in that space.
Yeah, we're the restaurant we're working with, certainly there's a renewed interest in the outdoor space. The Jim point, the construction costs drive a lot of decisions. The good news, bad news, outdoor space is generally some of the easier, less costly to incorporate into design if you have the room to spread out, obviously. However, it's not 12-month operational, without some augmentation. It's tough to get more than 9 or even 10 months out of those spaces. So yeah, I think that'll continue. I think you're going to see that people will be more comfortable outside, and there's going to be a move to try to make accommodations outdoors more comfortable. So we are seeing some of that, but again, something that's going to stick throughout is enhanced HVAC systems. We're seeing all sorts of innovations. Some are proven, some are unproven, being brought into the marketplace. And it's interesting. There's always a lot of discussion on that, and they do cost to implement. So hopefully those will stick, and it is about safety and security, and that's a lot of the conversation that we're having with end users. That's one of their focuses.
Well, and I guess I was also wondering, since we do work with a number of municipalities, and they've been very active with the outdoor dining and such, are there any and is there anything that the municipalities can do to be working with and promoting more hospitality and entertainment venues?
I can speak only to, some of the regulatory requirements for some of these spaces. Some municipalities have been better than others in dealing with granting permits for additional outdoor. Obviously, that was a modification to an existing facility in most cases, but I think they really need to look at it through the lens of the operator and their return on investment and see what they can do to, be more receptive on the regulatory requirements.
Great, thank you. And I've got another question too, and I think this is geared more to Kim and maybe to you, Pete, in terms of workforce. And it's great to hear that wages are coming up and people are getting back to work, but we're not there yet. And so with your current students, former students who are looking for work, what can you tell them? Are there areas, maybe just more into the details as well too? Where are the areas that are looking for employees, or is that too broad a question, I guess?
No, it's shifted as time has gone on during the past 12 months. I would bring in a lot of speakers with my classes and a lot of area hotel, regional HR. They were saying now's the time to, really look at the virtual employment. Hotels are hiring people to be working reservations and phone calls for their busy spots. At the time it was Florida that, they couldn't get enough staff in Florida. And then, now we're looking at seasonal areas around here in the leisure market around here. So, students, they need to be flexible, but they are definitely looking. I'm telling them to be flexible and to be open and maybe, not necessarily, you're not stepping out into your dream job day one, but everything's a stepping stone. And the more experience that you're getting right now, the better. And the more that you can learn from all these venues, particularly during a time where the establishment so much about how to survive. It's a great experience.
Wonderful, thank you. I think I do have one hand raised from Melissa Tatopoulos, and so from the town of Burlington. I keep trying to, and so I'm going to try to move her over so she can join the conversation if that works for you, Demetrius.
Fine.
And so she can ask her question. Melissa, I'm moving you over so you can ask your question directly to the group. Or not.
Yes, thanks, Stephanie.
Oh, good. Go ahead. You get the floor.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. So I was trying to get my chat to work. I apologize. But since you're here, I was listening, I guess, on a smaller scale for, communities that have maybe, a small arts and culture. I'm thinking in Burlington, there's like, the Burlington Players and stuff like this on a very kind of micro local level. How do you see, maybe this is for Pete, how do you see kind of communities, supporting or enhancing that? A lot of my mind goes to like, well, they need a venue, that we need to like kind of figure out, a black box theater or something for that, or is it the reverse? We need to kind of somehow, kind of feed that group first before there's a space, kind of chicken and egg question that comes up a lot in Burlington.
Yeah, I think it could go either way. I've seen some groups search for new spaces that are bigger. When this all first started to happen, I was thinking that we would be opening our smaller venues first and then working our way back up the ladder. And it's actually been the reverse. And kind of now with all the understanding that we've had over the last 13 months that a bigger venue, you can have a more distancing and larger capacity. So it's kind of exactly the opposite of what we thought originally in our first glance. But yeah, I think that's something I've seen too, is that small arts organizations looking for larger venues in order to do distance performances. But really, one of the biggest challenges, and it is kind of that chicken and the egg, is to rehearse and to actually have a show to put on, and the protocols that are involved with rehearsing safely are very, very difficult. So the performance day is one thing, but for instance, in Massachusetts right now, you're not allowed to sing on stage. You're not allowed to have a brass instrument on stage. You can have comedy or dance or something, but those restrictions are still in place despite the fact that the capacities are at 500. So a lot of presentations just aren't possible. Our Lowell building has 2 theaters in it, the large one that we manage, and there's also another 200, just over 200 seat space that the Merrimack Repertory Theater is resident in. They have gone through great lengths to be able to do to film a performance that they're going to bring out to their members and their subscribers once it's done. But just what they had to do to make that happen, to get permission from the Actors Union. I've learned more about MERV air filtration in the last year than I ever thought someone in the entertainment industry. Bill probably knows all about it, but I have become, as many people in our business have, just what it takes to put on a performance, to rehearse it, is kind of the step even before the chicken and the egg. So I think a lot of support is needed for arts organizations that are just trying to put out some type of programming. Lexington Symphony has done a great job of doing some virtual performances, but again, the steps that they had to take to do that were pretty substantial. So it's what, to be a local arts organization and to produce quality programming has always been a challenge, both in terms of artistically and financially, and those things are just that much more enhanced, those challenges, given what is being dealt with.
Thanks, Pete. Thank you all. I'm gonna.
No, well, Melissa, thank you for joining our conversation, and it's 1 o'clock or past 1 o'clock, so I'm going to, I think we're going to end today's conversation with thank you to our panel, Pete, Kim, Bill, Jim. Thank you all for your insights, your information, optimism, and all the work that you're doing in the area to promote the hospitality, entertainment businesses. We do appreciate it. Demetris, thank you for moderating today's panel. I think it was a great conversation. I do appreciate and look forward. I appreciate the optimism. So thank you all. And thank you everyone for attending today, and to our sponsors, AHP Architects, the BSC Group, and Reamer and Bronstein. We do appreciate our sponsors and all their support. And with that, we'll end today's discussion, and hopefully everyone can get outside. I think it's beautiful out there, and enjoy the nice weather, and get out and do some outdoor dining as well too, or indoor, whatever you're comfortable with. So thank you.
Great. Thank you all.
Very much.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the day. Take care, guys.
You're welcome.
Bye.